So when I got recruited, I didn't have a clue what a blockchain was. I didn't know. And I very much subscribe to the mainstream view that it's a scam and it's for criminals. And, I didn't dig deeper.
We do not need to store our own Bitcoin.
So this is the point I was making. I think it depends on who you are.
Today's guest is Jerry, a corporate veteran turned blockchain leader, now driving innovation at Apex Fusion. Once a skeptic, he is now on a mission to bridge the gaps in Web3 adoption. In this episode, we dive into what's holding Web3 back from mass adoption, how Apex Fusion is solving blockchain's biggest challenges, and the future of decentralization, reputation systems, and self-sovereign identity. Do you think that crypto is all hype? Well, you have to think again because this episode might change your mind. Let's dive in. Apex Fusion is now live as in February 20th. You've been coming to this region a lot. Coming from Canada, what is the thing that you found here most surprising so far?
First off, thank you for having me on your show. Shukran. I've been coming here since 2003. Okay. I've been here probably 10 times since then. And of course, the first thing is just the scale of how quickly things change and expand and the development and so forth. But the thing that surprised me this time coming is a few things. The first thing is the customer service. Everyone is super happy here, and then I think it was Kareem that was told me, a colleague of mine at Apex Fusion, that was telling me that the government has put a program in place of happiness and customer satisfaction, and I was like, why is everyone so happy? Why are people so kind, so nice?
You had a fascinating journey coming from Dell Technologies, the corporate world,
yes,
to Apex Fusion.
Yes.
What drew you to blockchain and what excites you about leading Apex Fusion?
It was very opportunistic the way that I came into the space. So I went to McGill University. I'm an engineer by training, did my MBA out of Paris. So I've always been in a very traditional academic first kind of career. And then professional career, I worked for large corporations, Fortune 500 companies, did big style deals and so forth. And right before, and I've born and raised in Canada, in Montreal, spent a lot of my career in France and in Europe, and basically always worked globally, been all over the world for my work. And I moved to the United States about 10 years ago with my family. And that's when I was working at Dell at the time. And my biggest client was Fidelity. And I got just an opportunity. There was a headhunter that called me to work for IOHK at the time, which is the builder of Cardano, for the chief commercial officer role. Mm-hmm. So I was, did large scale deals, big enterprise deals my whole career. And they were looking for people from the traditional, business world to come in and kind of help mature processes and bring that kind of more traditional business acumen into the Web3 space. So when I got recruited, I didn't have a clue what a blockchain was. I didn't know. And I very much subscribe to the mainstream view that it's a scam and it's for criminals. And, I didn't dig deeper. But when I did my interview, I started to dig deeper. And, it started with the Bitcoin white paper, the Ethereum white paper, Cardano white paper, and all these things. And then all the KOLs, they were called influencers back then. Now they're called KOLs. Just listening to them and then just deep diving. And then I'm like, I had an aha moment that we're reinventing something that's ancient, right? So we're reinventing money at the base of it, right? And much more than that. Money is just one piece of the puzzle. So it's really, really transformational. And then the thing that sealed the deal was I went to my biggest client, which is Fidelity, and I said, hey, listen, I have this opportunity to work at Cardano. Should I take it? And they said, yes, do it and don't look back. And then they told me the story about how they got into Bitcoin. So the CTO at the time, and I forget which it was, but it was early on in the Bitcoin days, was using the spare compute capacity at night because there's no trading at night. So they're using spare compute to mine Bitcoin and kind of accumulated a substantial amount of Bitcoin. And then one day brought it to the CEO and said, hey, listen, I've been using computers to mine Bitcoin. And at that time it was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And Abby Johnson, who's their CEO, is very forward thinking. And they were orange pilled. And Fidelity's always been a proponent of Bitcoin in our space. And so once I got the green light from Fidelity, I said, okay, I'm going to go do it. And I never looked back. So I was there in Cardano for 4 to 5 years, during the whole last bull cycle and the major transformation of our space. And, I took the plunge and the opportunity to kind of go my own way and co-found a project called Apex Fusion. And it's the most exciting thing I've ever done, to be honest. We can get deeper what Apex Fusion is, but in terms of my experience of it, this is the most challenging, exciting, wonderful thing I've ever done in my career. And I'm very privileged and blessed to have been allowed this opportunity.
Before we dive into Apex Fusion, I'm just curious, when and how did you buy your first Bitcoin?
So that's interesting. So it was very opportunistic. So I had an account with SoFi.
Okay.
Social finance. So that's a fintech platform in the United States that offers personal loans and is also a banking system and so forth. So I had no idea about, wallets and this, that, the other. I know that they offered Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so forth. And, I was, along with a lot of people during the pandemic, that's where I bought my first Bitcoin on a centralized platform. So that's where I got, my first exposure to it. And of course, rode the whole wave up and then down and then back up this time around. And I've been in the space ever since and, invest in different projects and very deep into that side of it. I'm a degen like everybody else to a certain extent. I'm more of a hodler investor,
okay,
but I have like my degen bag that I play with and it's fun, right? So that's part of it because when you play with it, you learn, right? And I got my investment side and my degen side, like a lot of people in our space.
So when the pandemic happened, you bought your first crypto, you started buying Cardano, you started learning about yourself.
That's right.
How was the experience so far? Because I don't know, was it a good experience buying the crypto or no, you had to use a lot of websites?
It's the UX and the UI is terrible. It's that side of it is terrible, right? But I was a programmer for a part of my career, so I had that IT nerd mentality that it's okay for me. Like I used to, program in like COBOL and Pascal, and I did Java, C++. So I'm quite familiar with that, right? But for somebody that's new to the space, I think even today, the UX and UI is probably still terrible, right? It has a high learning curve. People don't know what they're getting into. They don't understand the security risk that they're taking, how to manage it correctly, and so forth. So I still think if you want to be like self-custody, for example, which everyone should be doing with, a portion or a large portion, depending on people's risk profiles, it's a massive learning curve. It's not easy, and you have to do your own research, which is very different from traditional space where things are kind of well packaged and mature and so forth. So I think we're still not out of the proper UX UI phase. We haven't solved that problem.
The author of Crossing the Chasm was on this podcast, and he discussed with me there's early adopters, which like yourself, they don't really care about the UX UI, but they're very excited and they're missionary.
Yes.
And there's the rest of us.
Yeah.
What do you think that needs to happen in the crypto space in Web3 for the rest of us to start doing it?
That's a great question. So I think it really starts off with the regulatory clarity. So, and I'll tell you why. We need this to become mainstream. And once it becomes mainstream, then you get the large corporations that are excellent at UX, UI to come into the space and help with that, right? So I think it requires the technology companies, frankly, that know how to do that to enter our space. And they won't enter our space until it's given the blessing of the legislature, especially in the United States, right? So I think that's going to be the big move. Like when Apple comes in, right? You can guarantee the UX UI is going to be fantastic, right? So I think those are the types of big changes that need to happen for the UX UI to improve, because as of now, there's a lot of cost to improving it, maybe with not so much benefit. But when it goes mainstream and maybe billions of people are using it, not tens of millions of like early adopters and so forth, that's going to be critical, and that's going to have to be solved. So necessity is the mother of all invention. Once it becomes mainstream and you have to onboard billions of people, then hopefully the UX UI problem will be largely solved. And again, I think part of it is, frankly, which our industry people won't like, is that maybe it's not self-custody. Maybe it's, there's a front end and they custody on your behalf. That's why ETFs are so popular, because then you can go to Fidelity, for example, and you can get a Bitcoin ETF and they abstract all of it. They do it all for you. So I think that's part of it. I still recommend that people learn about our space and learn about self-custody, But I think the UX UI is also partially going to be solved by simply, custodial solutions and more centralized solutions that are in the front end that abstract all the complexity in the back end.
So you're saying that we do not need to store our own Bitcoin?
So this is the point I was making. I think it depends on who you are, right? Highly recommend you self-custody and you have a bit of Bitcoin or an amount of Bitcoin that you self-custody, for example, right? And the reason for that is it's self-sovereign and it has all these characteristics. It's stateless, all that kind of thing. If ever there was it's like an insurance policy against a tragedy, right? Or a catastrophe of some kind. That's something you can store it. You can take it to another country if there's some political unrest in your country and so forth. So I think there's a part of it you should self-custody, but the rest of it depends on the person because there is risk to self-custody as well, right? There's been recent events in our industry, like one of the executives of Ledger got kidnapped in France and his wife, right? So it's not all risk-free, right? So I think it depends on who you are. It depends what your risk profile is. My recommendation is custody, part of it, and then the rest is really up to you. But if you're going to custody, make sure that you understand security, you store your keys appropriately, you have hardware wallets, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, most of us were not going to do all of this.
Yeah, exactly. So I think kind of like me, start off with a centralized custodial platform that does it so you can learn about it, and then you can go down the levels afterwards. That I think is a good way to get adoption.
So again, I'm not a crypto degen, but I'm interested in Web3 in general.
Sure.
Can you, in layman terms, what exactly the problem that Apex Fusion is trying to solve?
Sure. So I'll work backwards because we're looking into the future, right? And the future is mass adoption of blockchain technology, okay? And once that happens, I think by and large, the people using it won't have a clue what's in the back end of it, right? Just like you don't have a clue necessarily what's in your phone and all the technologies in your phone. So our value propositions really around kind of creating for people maybe understand more the Web 2 IT, traditional IT version of this, we're creating kind of a middleware software, right? There's two main technologies in our space. There's the technology that Bitcoin is based on called UTXO. There's the technology that Ethereum is based on, which is account-based. One is far more deterministic, secure, a good store of value, and the rest of it. The other one's more programmable, right? So one, you could think of it, it's very oversimplified, but digital gold is what Bitcoin represents in layman's terms, and Ethereum and all the smart contract versions are more kind of world computers or ventures that kind of get built on top of it. You create functionality on top of it. So we're building a system that merges these two technologies together as a kind of like a middleware layer, and then leverages the pros and cons of each of these technologies. To explain it any deeper, you'd have to be really Web3 to understand it, but I think that's really the gist of it. And we brought people that, really talented people from Cardano and from Polygon. And Cardano is a UTXO-based chain, and they did very innovative things in the space, research-based, peer-reviewed, all these types of things. And Polygon was the main technology that was being experimented with large corporations like Starbucks and Disney and all this kind of thing. So we're taking a very robust, secure technology and merging with a very scalable, enterprise-friendly technology. And I think that's the best way to describe it to someone who's not familiar with Web3.
Okay. Let's say in games, I bought something on the UTXO. Can I use the same NFT in a different? Can I use the same NFT in a different structure or no?
Yes, you can. So first off, we're going to have our own internal, what they call bridging technology. And so you could bridge it in any chain, and use it on any of our internal chains. But then we're also partnering with external chains, and therefore you can transport your assets across chain. Again, ultimately, I think all that's going to get abstracted, and this is going to be the back layer, and it's going to be all automated. But absolutely, yes, the way we design it, it's all portable and what they call modular.
So currently, the Web3 is a bunch of islands. They're not really connected.
So they're getting more and more connected, and we're part of that story, right? We're kind of merging the big two tech pieces. But yes, through bridging technologies, through interoperability technologies, more and more it's getting connected. But right now, the technology is relatively disconnected. But I think that the other part that's disconnected is the tribalism. In other words, if I'm a Bitcoiner, everything else they call them, excuse my French, shitcoins, right? So, and then that's very derogatory, right? It's like, you don't have to, we all love Bitcoin. We think it's amazing. We bought into it, came into space for it, but then calling everything else a shitcoin doesn't do service, right? And there's a tribalism and a community aspect to crypto that a lot of people don't understand, but exists and can be toxic. So in our ethos, in our vision and mission, we're all about, we're better together, anti-tribalism, communities working together. At the end of the day, there's a concept called Metcalfe's law. And basically the value of the network is the square of the participants, right? And so this tribalism has a very zero-sum mentality. In other words, for you to win, I have to lose. For me to win, you have to lose. That's not the case. Of course, competition is healthy and good, but not to the point where, somebody's evil or bad because they're using a different technology. We saw some of that with Android and iPhones to a certain extent, but it's like amplified by 10 in crypto. It's also because it's very decentralized and it's internet native and it's social media, powered. So social media already creates these feedback loops and these bubbles, and that's been reinforced in crypto. And we're saying, no, we're going to actively work against that. In other words, we're happy to work with other projects, come in, work with us, and vice versa. And this ethos of anti-tribalism, I think, ultimately adds value to everybody.
And this is one of the things that detracted me from the Web3, which is the sense of tribalism. And my Bitcoin is better than yours, or my technology is better than yours. But how do you understand this tribalism in Web3?
So, I think Nietzsche said that God is dead, right?
And we killed him.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that new religions fill the void. So there is a little bit of religion in crypto, right? So it's religion also comes from the French word de relier, right? To bring together. So by creating, it starts with a story, what we call a meme, right? So crypto at first is not even technology, it's a story. We're building this decentralized community. We can opt out of the traditional system. The origins of crypto are very libertarian and to some extent anarchist, right? So that is the core of it. So it's the tribe was anti-establishment. And then they created their communities about how we should tackle this problem. And then they themselves became tribal. And it helps because it's what creates a sense of community. It holds people together. It gives people a sense of culture. Like each chain is also kind of like a culture as well. And then the downside of it is it kind of ignites the negative side of tribalism, which is to say that the win-lose kind of mentality. That for me to win, you have to lose. It doesn't have to be that way. I think just like civilization broke that, I think as we mature, we'll become more civilized in the crypto space. Right, because we were all tribal. If I was in this village and you were in that village, this village would kill that village. That was humanity for, if we've been around for 300,000 years, for 295,000, right? Right, until there were civilizations that grew and said, well, maybe we can cooperate more. And they still war at the nation state level, but there's more collaboration at a larger scale. So I think that's coming to crypto, and we're saying, we're putting our hat down on the table and saying we want to do this. We want to instill those values of collaboration.
And that's why even on your website, you guys take the time to think about the values, the ethos, the vision, and the mission behind Apex Fusion.
Yes. So again, we could take a lot of different analogies. The thing with crypto and blockchain is that it's such a transformational technology on so many levels, because yes, it's a way of exchanging value, right? But it's also a community building apparatus. So you can also think of blockchains. Some people say that, I think it's Balaji that uses this, that it's a nation or it's a city, right? So you can also look at blockchain as powering a nation or a decentralized nation or a decentralized city. So that's the way that I see things.
So hopefully once this episode is released, Apex Fusion will be live.
Yes.
As a person, let's say one of our listeners, he's buying blockchain or buying things on the blockchain for the first time. What the benefits that he will get?
Okay, great. So we're releasing things in phases. And the first phase and the most important phase of a blockchain is decentralization and the bootstrapping of the network. So blockchains are powered by nodes or validators. And so the first focus, laser focused of ours, is to create the most decentralized blockchain as possible. And so the first thing that you could do on Apex Fusion is buy the token and what we call stake it, which is you either provide it to a stake pool operator or validator to secure the network, or you run your own stake pool operation or validator to secure the network yourself. That's the basis and the foundation of Apex Fusion, and that's where we're starting from. Then we're building layers on top of it. The next big thing that we're kind of putting a big bet on is a reputation system. So again, in the community mindset, how do you reward your community? Well, you reward your community depending on how they participate in the network and what they do. So the more value they bring to the network, you should reward that value. So that's the next thing that people can do as soon as they get Apex, is participate in the reputation system, start doing things. And what does doing things mean? One is staking, you could buy it. And then when we start launching our other layers, which will bring in smart contract functionality, and that what we call dApps, decentralized applications, then you can start building on the platform and create use cases on the platform. Back to your NFTs and your DeFi use cases, AI, tokenized real world assets, all that kind of stuff. So we're also going to be incentivizing building on our platform. So that's the next phase. And there's 4 or 5 phases that are going to roll out, and we're going to publish that roadmap. And then in each phase, there's something new to do that unlocks new functionality. And our community that comes with us at the beginning will come along this journey with us.
You once mentioned cascading disruption. I'm just curious, what does that mean? And can you give me an example?
Yeah, so that's Charles that mentioned that. Charles Hoskinson, who is the founder of IOHK and the founder of Cardano. That's his cascading disruption is his vision, right? But I think what that means in practice is you start with an idea, you create a network, and then that network creates new use cases and new innovations, and that's multiplied by the power of the network, which is an exponential kind of function. So I think that's where cascading disruption comes from. And I think our entire space is cascading disruption. Let me give an example of things that may open up. So if in the US they give a market structure and they allow tokens to be used more broadly for revenue sharing or for capital formation, you're going to have multiple trillion-dollar industries that unlock, right? One is the replacement or the merging of crypto with the traditional finance. Another one is startups. Why would you do the equity rounds, wait for an IPO, do all that complexity when you could just launch a token, right? That's another trillion-dollar market. Then you got tokenized real-world assets, real estate, equities. There's a new stock exchange that's being built in Dallas, where I live in Texas, and I suspect they're going to use blockchain technology. There's BlackRock, Citadel that are behind it. And therefore, there's another big transformation, and it's because it's faster, cheaper at the end of the day. There's also there's a very dollars and cents value that I think will transform enterprise, is that it's faster and cheaper to transfer value. So if you want to do remittances, for example, cross-border payments, currently the banks do that and they take a big percentage, or Western Union or something like that. With crypto, it doesn't cost anything and it's instantaneous. So back to the cascading disruption question, each time you do this, it unlocks more and more disruption because the markets that it can conquer or participate in become bigger and bigger. It's an exponential curve.
So you're saying that crypto, we will no longer need Visa and MasterCard?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I think Visa, they're already working with crypto. So they're going to have to change their business model, right? And they're going to have to provide value for the 2 or 3% that they charge. Because right now you can use crypto rails and you don't charge anything. So what's that value they could bring? Rewards, loyalty, insurance, things like that. So they're going to all have to change their models. They can no longer rely on rent or extraction.
So you once mentioned that blockchain adoption is going to be much faster in emerging technology and emerging markets.
Yes.
Why do you think that?
Well, because they don't have a legacy system to start from, right? So a great example is the bank. Well, yeah, exactly. The great example, exactly. The Cold War and all the rest of it. The banking system. I think there's 1 billion unbanked people or something along those lines, because it's not profitable for the banks to bank them. So you're talking about people that have a mobile phone, but a bank doesn't want to bank them, right? So they can leapfrog. And that's a perfect example, one of many, of where they can use the technology immediately and they don't have to wait for some system to be built, right? It's there. It's global. It's ready. So I think that's why in emerging markets, it would be useful. I went to the country of Burundi 4 or 5 years ago, and they don't know how many people are in their country. They have no reliable census. So they were looking, and there's people that are trying to help them about how they can use technology to help them with the census. So they have no means today to do the census, so they could leapfrog other countries and do it with technology, and blockchain could be part of that.
I want to dive into one clear use case that Apex Fusion is trying to solve. And if you have to pick one use case that best represent what Apex Fusion aimed to achieve, what would it be?
So it's a great question. The answer is all of the above. Basically, we're providing infrastructure. So we're building the base platform upon which dApps can be built, decentralized applications. And so we're not really taking a bet to say that we're focusing on this use case or that use case. What we're saying is that there's probably going to be some critical infrastructure that we need. So marketplaces, wallets, and so forth. So we're building the buildings and the water supply and the electricity and all that kind of stuff for a city. But then what businesses get put in that city, that's not up to us. We offer support, but it's the community that builds that on top of it. So it's really up to them. In my view, as of today, the two big product market fits that exist in our industry, that is Bitcoin as a store of value. In other words, digital gold, even though it's much more than that, right? And there's amazing things they're doing in the energy sector. So I live in Texas. We've been having like winter storms once a year now. And we had a huge issue where the grid was not stabilized because of the variability of electricity between summer and winter. In summer months in Texas, you need a lot of electricity for air conditioning, but in winter months, you don't. So they have to lower the grid. Bitcoin mining is a great way to keep the grid alive and monetize it for peaks like this. So that's like a sub-use case, which I think is an amazing product market fit. But for the general masses, Bitcoin as a store of value is the product market fit. The other one is stablecoins. It's digital dollar. Very simple. Payments, right? Cross-border, people in countries that don't have access to dollars get digital dollars. That for me is the second big, massive use case that has product market fit. And I'll give you an example that it applies to me. So last year, it's a startup. We have our labs in Abu Dhabi. We have our foundation in Switzerland. We're getting investment money from the United States, and we were in a regime that didn't like crypto. So we got choke point 2.0. I'm not sure if you heard of it. So the banking system did actively go after our industry. And we had, a significant amount of money trapped in banks that we couldn't have access to because some of our investors were not crypto native and they didn't understand stablecoins. If we didn't have stablecoins to run our business, we'd be dead. Simple. So stablecoins and digital payments is another big use case. Then we got a lot of the emerging things that are interesting and probably have a use case. So decentralized finance, I think, has a use case, but needs regulatory clarity to activate it. Lending, exchanges, all this kind of stuff, right? Tokenized real-world assets likely has a use case. There's likely a use case in gaming. There's likely a use case in AI in some fashion. And there's a lot of innovation that happens in crypto. And the first iteration is usually just memes and games and playing and betting, right? But then the second iteration gets more interesting, and then probably the third iteration gets more interesting. So for me, the Bitcoin is a store of value, and digital payments, I think, are super solid. And I think recently there was the first billion-dollar acquisition of a crypto company. It was a stablecoin company. And I forget which kind of Stripe, I think it was Stripe in the United States, bought a stablecoin company for $1 billion. So clearly there's a there. And over time, I think it's going to be a generational transformation. It's going to take 20, 30 years for it to really get to get things. It's going to go slow, and then all of a sudden, there's an expression that says you overestimate what can be done in 2 years and underestimate what can be done in 10. And I think that's what we've seen. I've seen that personally, just from the previous. I've been in this space since 2019, so in the past 6 years, massive transformation. But it's hard to see it while you're in it, because a lot of the things is just innovation, and most innovation fails. But then out of that innovation, you get some of the use cases, a bit like in the Web 2 space. Back in the internet bubble days, you had pets.com and all these things. They were trying to do things, and 99% of them failed. But what came out of them was Amazon, Facebook, Google, Apple, etc. So we're going to have those things emerge from our industry. And I think those are the first kind of proof points.
But is there any specific use case that you're excited about, and why?
That's an excellent question. So for me, the use case is the self-sovereign part of it. That is the killer app of blockchain. It's it's not opt out. I don't like saying opt out of the system, because I've been born and raised in the system, and the system has treated me well. So I don't want to, disparage the system that treated me well. As an immigrant born in Canada, going through the university system, I've been very well treated by Western democracy. So I don't want to disparage it. That being said, having an alternative to hedge against abuses of the system is phenomenal. So for me, having an alternative system that people can collaborate with in a decentralized fashion is the most exciting thing in a general sense. That for me is it. That's the biggest, the thing that excites me the most in our space is that.
How does that solution will look like?
There's a lot of people trying to tackle what they call like the digital nation state.
Okay.
Right? It's like, how can you collaborate cross-border in a decentralized way all the way through the stack, right? Like having all the same attributes that a nation has, but in a decentralized manner. And we're far away from that. I think we've solved maybe the community building side of it, with social media kind of on top of it, where people interact with each other with a common goal and vision and so forth, common story, which is what people do. And then they can exchange value, which is the monetary system. But then you have to build the other pieces of the puzzle, like the governance side of thing. Like they've been experimenting with a concept called DAOs in Web3, decentralized autonomous organizations. They haven't really solved it yet, but it's being in progress. So once all these things slowly mature, and also people culturally start understanding this and collaborating this way, you create a new kind of decentralized nation state possible from it. That is the most exciting part of it. That doesn't mean you stop being Canadian or American or whatever, but you can also be, part of a community that's decentralized, that has all the same services as a nation, but in a decentralized way.
This is one of the benefits that Web3 gives, which is self-sovereignty. But I'm just quite curious, as you mentioned, you grew up in the Western democracy, you like it. Why being self-sovereign is very important to you?
Because we saw the abuses that started to creep up, right? Censorship, choke point. So Western democracies have gone down a dark path in the past 4 years, or probably more, right? And so having access to information outside of the mainstream, having access to value trading outside the mainstream is an important part of democracy. Because if you don't have that alternative and the state controls everything, then how can you organize, right? So we had this example in Canada with the truckers, the trucker protests. The only way they were able to get financing, they shut the banking for them. The only way they got financing was with Bitcoin and through crypto. So that was a way to express a political opinion, even though the state was being very authoritarian, even in a Western democracy. So we've been seeing authoritarianism rise in the world, not just in democracies. And this is a counterbalance to that. The other side, which I'd like to kind of bring on a different topic, is we're living several singularities at the same time, right? We're reinventing money with crypto. We're reinventing the printing press with social media. And now we're reinventing the Industrial Revolution through AI. So we're new money, new printing press, and new Industrial Revolution. But instead of replacing muscles, we're replacing neurons. And we're living it all simultaneously. It's insane, right? And so that is a powerful cocktail for an authoritarian regime to take control of. And if you don't have other means of collaboration, that could have absolute power. So I'm not a libertarian and anarchist, but it's also important to understand that for democracies and for civilized countries to survive that have civil liberties and all the rest of it, you have to have these alternative means of collaboration.
From your side, what is the biggest step change that happened in the past 6 years that actually pushed the crypto space forward?
So I think the new administration's view on it and the new regulations that are going to come, which was powered by the community. In other words, the community really forced the hand of the political system to do it, is going to be the biggest change, right? That's going to happen. So I think it's graduated from, we have an expression in our space that say they first, what is it? First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We're in the win stage of that 4-step process. So we're winning now, right? As an industry. And the only thing that could probably stop us now, which is part of also our mission and vision, is if we divide amongst ourselves. So if we stay united, we can win, and we can really bring the real promise of our industry, not the speculation and the gambling and the scammy stuff, right? But the real utility is if we stay united as an industry and we solve the big problems. If we don't solve the big problems, then we'll stay relevant, in my view.
So you mentioned...
Or become irrelevant, rather, because I'm not sure we are relevant, but become irrelevant.
No, I agree. We were talking about the network effect.
Yes.
And
Metcalfe's law.
Metcalfe's law. And I've worked with a lot of startups that leverage the network effect. And we have a playbook on how to scale those companies.
Yeah.
And eventually we all reach one point which, in order to scale, you need to solve something called marketplace quality, which is basically you have to kick out the bad actors.
Yes.
And
great point.
And something that you guys are tackling, it's the reputation system. Just how does that work and why it's important at this stage?
So you nailed it, right? So the network effect in blockchain and decentralized world is powered through game theory and incentivization. Very, very simple. You incentivize, you get a multiplier effect. The quality of the marketplace bit is through the reputation system. So there requires some semi-central control, right? So we do have a foundation and we will put rules into the reputation system, and it will be less democratic to start with. Ultimately, we would love it for it to be decentralized and voted by the community and all that kind of thing. But to start a network, you have to stay centralized to a certain extent, right? And so we're gonna try our best through the reputation system to, I'm not sure solve that problem, but help solve that problem by rewarding good actors and by not rewarding bad actors.
And who are the bad actors will be on such a platform?
I think people that are overly extractive, right? In other words, if they're not providing value to the network and it's about just value extraction versus value adding, I think that's the main difference. That doesn't mean they can't do it, right? That just means we won't reward them for it. Our mission is about utility and adoption. And so, but it's also decentralized and permissionless. So you could do what you want on the network, but we will reward things that add utility and value to the network. And it's very difficult to define that. Extraordinarily difficult to define that. And not everyone, you can never make everyone happy about that. But we'll take an attempt at it.
So again, marketplace quality, not just crypto. Every company that leverage network effects struggle with it. And there's many ways to solve this problem. Reputation is one way to solve it. There's any other way that you guys thought of it, how to manage this, or not really?
Not. You introduced a concept that was very interesting that I will take and digest. But don't forget, we're also an innovation platform. So it's not all going to be about Halate, the labs, or the foundation solving all the problems. It's going to be how do the new startups and dApps on our network solve those problems. So I'm sure some of those will emerge, because there are marketplaces that do emerge on platforms. The DEXs, the decentralized exchanges, NFT, like OpenSea and so forth. They're marketplaces. So they have to solve that problem for their particular niche.
Mm-hmm.
We have the benefit of looking what's happening and then saying, oh, wait, these guys have done something awesome here. I don't have an answer now, but you bring up something very interesting.
And how does success look like for Apex Fusion in 5 years from now? Because you emphasize that you guys like to play the long game. You're not here just for a quick grab and run away.
That's right. No, we're in it for forever, as long as it takes, right? For me, this is my view. It doesn't have to be anybody's view, right? This is my view. Is if in 5 years there is a thriving community that could live off of our blockchain. In other words, start a business, make enough money to support a family, that don't need to work for a corporation, for example, that can do it in this decentralized way, that is success for me. Building thriving businesses and being able to support businesses and people, and as many people as possible, would be my vision of success.
So what is the moat of Apex Fusion? Is it the community?
Yes. The community is always the moat of any blockchain. And the bootstrap problem is by far the hardest part of it. So we've leveraged existing technologies that we've leveraged the Cardano technology and the Polygon technology. And we're in active discussions with people in the Bitcoin community as well to see how we can work together with the Bitcoin community. Because also my particular vision is that the ultimate settlement layer is Bitcoin, right? That is the most secure, most decentralized. Arguments could be had about this, but is the most secure layer, and it's got the most adoption, right?
It's the most popular.
Yeah, it's the most popular. And connecting to that, I think, is the key. So we're going to bootstrap, by servicing existing communities and by solving problems that they have today. So we're adding value to those communities. And then the value goes both ways, Metcalfe's law, right? It's not a zero-sum game. Adding value to community, they add value to you, and vice versa. So that's how we bootstrap it. And then we kind of connect more communities together, and then the network effect multiplies exponentially, because like big blocks of community coming together.
That's another thing about companies that leverage network effect, that we don't target individuals, we go target communities.
Exactly.
And you mentioned the bootstrap problem. Do you have any plans how we're going to target the first 100 customers, 1,000 customers, 100,000 customers?
Yeah, so these are the different phases I spoke about. So the first phase is the validator set.
Okay.
In other words, and we already have 140 validators. So we actually have 140 businesses on our platform right now, mini businesses. And that could come into the thousands. So that's the foundation of the platform. Then the next level is adding on the network of the smart contract chains. So we have a chain called Vector, which also uses UTXO, faster and cheaper UTXO technology, which will attract the dApps that use that technology and bring them onto our platform. And then we got Nexus, which is the EVM side of it, the account-based side of it. And that's really the biggest pool of developers, of liquidity, of all this is in that space, right? And so, we'll go from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions, and then hopefully to billions. But billions is more than the entire industry altogether. So we'll all have to grow together for us to take that share. And again, share means you don't have to necessarily only work on one thing, right? Like you can be in multiple communities. There's no barrier, right? So that's how we go to the thousands, hundreds of thousands, billions, and then big B.
So for the developers, investors, community members listening, what is the one thing that they can do today to get involved with Apex Fusion and be part of this journey?
So, the common stuff, follow us on Twitter, get on our Telegram channels, our Discords, all that kind of thing. And then the first wave of value is going to be, procure the token, stake, get a stake pool operator, and then participate in our reputation system. Get connected, and then you'll see all the education is there, teaches you what you can and cannot do in it. And that's going to be kind of our not only our rewards and reputation system, but our education system. It's going to be through that reputation system. So procure the token, stake, run a stake pool operation, connect to the reputation system, follow us on Twitter, Discord, Telegram.
And can we do this now on the website, or we need to download Telegram?
No, it's on the website.
Okay.
It has links to everything. you can navigate through the website.
And you guys already have the white paper there as well.
Yeah, the white paper is there, tokenomics paper, our mission, vision, etc. Is all there, and then links to the appropriate things. If you're a tech person, you're probably Discord is probably your best entry point there. Of course, we're gonna expand our library of documentation and so forth. But right now, the best entry point is follow us on the different channels and participate through staking and through the reputation system to start.
I will include all of those links into our episode.
Fantastic.
But if there's any other thing that our audience can be helpful for you, most of our audience are here in the MENA region, Middle East, where we're very interested in crypto in general.
Sure. I mean, find out about us, research us, and reach out to us too. You can reach out to us, and more than happy. We'll have presence at Token 2049 here in Dubai. So we'll be here when we come back. Look out for us. We're up and coming. We're what they call a hidden gem.